Hey everybody, excuse me, I have read your part one of your quality project this morning and this afternoon and have provided feedback on your paper. You're going to look for the red text that's going to be put into faculty comments on your paper for improvement. There were a huge cross-section of quality issues that are ongoing in your organizations, from wrong site surgery to medication reconciliation. CAUTI, I think, was the one that was the most commonly commented. I think there were 3 or 4 of you focusing on the CAUTI infection rates. We had C. diff. It's always great for me to kind of see what's going on out there in the practice world, and you all providing that insight in your papers was really helpful. I am amazed that in 2017 we are still talking about basic communication and hand washing and safe medication practices, kind of those cornerstones of what we've always done as practicing nurses, and we still struggle to do those things professionally, to do those things according to our policies and procedures, or even as basic as following our Nurse Practice Act. So it was really interesting to see those insights. If this is a cumulative project, so you're going to go through and look at the feedback that's been provided to you for part one and determine what types of adjustments or tweaks you need to make before you move on to a PowerPoint for part two. Some areas that I think were common that needed a little bit of polish and a little bit more detail were the details of your own organization, kind of what that looked like. If you had a quality issue, what did it look like in your own organization? What were you measuring? What was your organization measuring its success against? Were they looking at Medicare, Medicaid standards? Was there a safety standard that was being followed? And then how did your organization measure its success or failure according to that benchmark? And then to look at the financial ramifications. It's not enough to be able to say globally, here's a number that this common problem causes. You need to be able to a little bit more granular in that detail. So to be able to say that maybe hospital-acquired infections is $10 billion a year. Okay, what makes up that $10 billion a year? Break it down. And then look at your own organizational benchmarks and look at, if it's $10 billion a year across the United States, what would it look like in your own organization if you looked at the percentage that you're not meeting? Even if you're just able to give me a little bit of details about how you're measuring against a benchmark and what percentage you're off on that benchmark, and then how that relates. Are you close? Are you not close? Are you right on target with national benchmarks? Just talk a little bit more about your own experience so that I can really get a good sense of this being an ongoing quality issue. The assignment was not to fix an issue that's already been fixed. Part two is going to be taking the issue that you're dealing with and making a recommendation for an innovative solution based on some evidence-based literature that you're going to be looking through. But before you can move to part two and do your voiceover PowerPoint and your presentation, you really need to polish part one. And folks, that does not mean you have to rewrite your paper. All it means is to take your paper and write some notes on it so that when you transfer that information into your PowerPoint, that it is as detailed as it can be. And I realize that there's some practical limitations in some of your organizations, but make the effort to try to really personalize this issue to your own organization and provide data. Enough said. One of the real blessings I have when I'm reading your work is seeing how you think about the topics that we're exploring this week and how it relates to a biblical perspective. Your classmate, Abby, did a beautiful job really wrapping up quality and the calling we have as Christian nurse leaders. Abby wrote in her paper, John 13, verse 34 states, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have loved one another." As Christian nurse leaders, there is a higher calling within our own work environment that drives quality care within the workplace. Christ gives us the drive to love others, which in turn creates a higher need to constantly seek what is best for others, which can include quality patient-centered care. Philippians chapter 2 verse 4 states, "Let us Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also the interest of others. As Christian nurse leaders, we have a calling to advocate for others, constantly and continuously searching for innovative ways to provide patient-centered care. That is the utmost of that is of the utmost quality. I think Abby does a beautiful job reminding us that we are not just looking for what gets us by. We're not just looking for the minimum requirements. As Christian nurse leaders, we should always be looking for the biggest, the best. We need to always be searching for innovative, evidence-based methods to improve our patients' outcomes. They will know us by our works. They will. And I love that Abby has brought that to light. So I appreciate those insights. And I love that Abby's insight about innovation and looking for innovative solutions is super smart, because that's going to segue into next week's work. I'm going to pause and give you a little bit of APA feedback on things just as in a general I want you to be mindful of. Let's see, on my list. I think we may have talked about this. You want to avoid direct quotes as much as possible. Synthesize what you have read. If you have read an article and you find a paragraph or a sentence or two that's relevant to your topic, explain how it relates to your topic and then cite it with an in-text citation. It is not necessary to use direct quotes. It actually doesn't. As a graduate level writer, you want to be able to take what you've read and paraphrase it and put it in the application of how it relates to your content. And that's that synthesis. And we want to see more of that and less direct quotes. If you are running heads, want to remind you that the running head on page 1 is different than the running page on page 2. The actual title, running head, goes with the title of your paper on page 1, and then on page 2 and the rest of the paper, running head is not there. I want to also remind you that the title of your paper should be descriptive of what is in the paper. So if your paper this week was on let's say it was on your wrong surgical sites, a good paper title would be Nurse Leaders in Quality Improvement, semicolon, wrong site surgeries. That, when I look at your title, I would go, I know exactly what this paper is about to be. You're going to take that topic and you're going to abbreviate it for your running head. Normally, the running head of a paper is used to index it for searching. So you want to be able to put a running head that's not your entire lengthy paper title, but what you want, what's highly important. For you, you may have felt that the quality, the nurse leader in quality was an important component. Use that as your running head, but be comfortable using an abbreviated version of your paper title in your running head so your running head is clean and it doesn't go into a second line. Remember that the title of your paper should be descriptive of the content within it. I want you to be mindful of the difference between the word since and because. When you use the word since, S-I-N-C-E, is about time. I have not seen my grandparents since Christmas. Time. Because is a relationship. Because this happened, this occurred. So they're not interchangeable, they're not synonyms. So make sure you're using them correctly. So, since is about time, because is about relationship. Make sure you have clarity in that. Also, the other issue that I saw was very common is the use of the comma. Please take the time to go in and really look to see if you are using the punctuation comma correctly. It is such an innocent little mark on the paper when we use it that sometimes we overuse it because it feels comfortable to break sentences up. Sometimes we want to break them up like we speak. That is not always the best habit. So if you got feedback that you're not using the comma correctly, please take some time to do a little bit of research and refresh yourself on the use of comma. I know that sounds silly, but it can really disrupt the flow of a sentence. Also want to encourage you that if you're using a lot of commas in your sentences are likely to be very lengthy. If you think about the last journal article you read, if you opened it up, you're going to notice that most well-written journal articles are filled with paragraphs that are filled with short, concise sentences. We got lots of practice in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade of how to write and develop a properly grammatically correct compound sentence so that we could get really good at using commas and all of the grammatical syntax to connect lots of sentences and make them all into one and make them grammatically correct. Just because it's grammatically correct doesn't mean it's clear, doesn't mean that it's that it conveys your idea as well. The shorter, more concise sentences are preferred in scholarly writing. So if you find that you really like commas, it may be also that your sentence style of writing is too complex. Try to break down your sentences into small, meaningful, concise sentences. Avoid commas as much as possible. And if you're overusing them, again, break down your sentences and make them shorter. Going through my list. If you're using formatting software to do your reference list and your in-text citations, God bless you, no issues with that at all. Lots of us have used them. My only encouragement is that you need to be as attentive to detail as your formatting software is. Your formatting software is going to grab all sorts of things from your paper and can inadvertently put things in the wrong place. So if you don't know what's supposed to be where, when you proofread your paper, you won't catch it. So if you're getting feedback and in your head you're thinking, well, that's what the software told me to put, it may be that the software is picking up things or giving you incorrect information as far as where things go. Your APA manual is your best tool for APA formatting. So make sure that you are using that as your best use guide. Perfectly okay to use formatting software. Just know that you got to be smarter than the computer sometimes. Okay, I think I'm out of my list. Let's talk briefly about next week. You've got 2 assignments that are due. It is the reflective exercise 1, but it is broken into 2 components. So you're going to submit a Word document and a PowerPoint document together. That you're going to have 2 files in the submission. The first one is a Word document. It's asking you to talk about some personal experiences with innovation within the workplace setting since you've begun practice. I've been practicing for 24 years, so I still remember the 5-layered carbon copied paper that we wrote medication orders on, and having to use a ballpoint pen and press really, really hard so that very bottom copy that was left in the MAR for you to use was legible. So I've seen huge amounts of innovation in how we document and administer medications. So it's always a fun assignment for me to read. Hopefully spend a few minutes of thinking about the things that really have wowed you. The second part is your PowerPoint to use as a way to encourage innovation within your team. The idea with this PowerPoint is that you are persuasive. One of the first steps in persuasion is to have people's attention. And how we get people's attention in presentations is we make the presentation aesthetic and meaningful. So as you develop your PowerPoint, you should be using appropriate graphics, appropriate pictures, appropriate graphs and charts as necessary. Minimal word content. You can use the notes section or use additional slides so that your slides don't get overly chunky with lots of information. You want to use your last slide as a reference sheet and be creative. Think about, if I'm a viewer, how am I going to feel being trapped in one of the in-services and having to watch this for 15 minutes? I get lots of questions about how long the PowerPoint should be, as long as it needs to be. Typically 8 to 12. Slides. You don't want to go on very long because remember, your audience is only going to be interested for a few minutes and then they're going to start wondering what you brought for dessert. So be thoughtful about the length, normally 8 to 12. So keep it interesting, keep it relevant, and focus on persuading your viewer to use innovation in the healthcare environment. So read your instructions carefully. You should be in full swing of working on your practicum hours. If you're having any troubles or any concerns with that, holler at me and let me know, and we will try to get together and chat about that and resolve any issues you have. Know that I'm here, folks. I'm praying for you. Weather has been super weird in the South, so if you are caught up in the hurricane belt right now and you are experiencing stress or changes in your circumstances because of that, please reach out. Know that I am praying for you, for those of you that are having safety issues, but also so many of us are still getting back into the swing of beginning school and little people going to school. We're all, still trying to get our days and nights squared away and get our sleep routines and packing lunches and all the things that happen in real life while you're in the middle of an academic program. So know that I'm thinking about you. Touch base and let me know how you are. Use the Ask the Professor link for general who, what, where kinds of questions, and send me a personal email if you have anything specific that's just about you, and I'm happy to address it. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Take care.